Hello, and welcome to the Old Farm Bus Podcast. This is the back of the bus session.
Hello and welcome to the Old Farm Bus, back of the bus sessions. Today I'm really excited because I've got an amazing human on here, James Simpson.
Thank you. How embarrassing.
I will do that all the way through the podcast.
Yeah, okay,
I'm
right,
just going to celebrate you.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Mate, you're a great human and I've only met you two times now? Two or three times now.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times, yeah.
You're a big part of why we're going into Alfreton. I want to really get into the nitty gritty of that because I wasn't even at that town council meeting.
No, okay.
But Chrissy came home and was like, there was an amazing guy there. he's such an inspiration, been doing crazy stuff. So can you just run me by a few of the wild triathlons, Ironmans, marathons that you've done?
Okay, right, yeah, I can do that because this is my favourite topic probably to talk about. I like
well,
all
let's
these.
do that then.
Basically I always did some sports after secondary school, and then I went away and joined the army, and obviously they make you do lots of running and carrying heavy things and things like that. And then I came out and I kept up doing running mainly for an athletics club, and then eventually you think, well, I'll run a marathon, like everybody seems to, and I ran a marathon. And then basically I'll run a marathon a bit quicker, and then I ran a marathon a bit quicker. And then I felt sort of, because I'm not the fastest athlete in the world, I always felt vaguely, like a combination of vaguely disappointed in how quick I was doing it, but also a lack of motivation to wanting to be much quicker anyway. Like, you know, did I want to work really hard for a year to shave 5 minutes off something? And the thing that appealed to me was perhaps try and go in a bit further. So I ran like 50-mile race, which obviously
When you say you were disappointed to your time, what times were they?
So my fastest marathon is about 3:26, something like that. So it's not that that's a terrible time.
Isn't that really
for an
good?
amateur athlete, it's okay. I mean, it's getting as though that is now slow. People are getting quicker all the time because
What's
we
a
know
good
more.
time?
Well, that's impossible to say without insulting people, isn't it? But I think good times.
Yeah.
They start at about 3:15, in my opinion.
Wow.
I don't have a real reason for saying that, but in my head, that's the number that if I ran quicker than 3:15, I'd think, oh, that was fast. So, but then I ran further, and then once you ran a sort of 50-miler, obviously you think, I wonder if I could travel 100 miles on my feet. So I've done a couple of 100-mile races, which are incredibly difficult because obviously you're on your feet for such a long time. But I enjoyed them. You don't have to go too fast, otherwise you'd blow up, and it's a good challenge, so I liked that. And then a friend of mine had said to me, I think you might like triathlon, because you like swimming anyway, and you ride your bike sometimes. So I joined a cycling club, and then I did a couple of small triathlons, and then I did a half Ironman. Wow. A half Ironman is like a 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile on the bike, and then a half marathon, a 13.1 mile run. Wow. And I did that with a mind to doing that. I want to do a full Ironman, which is the one that every triathlete wants to do.
Yeah.
If you want to do an Ironman, that's how you know you're Alfreton's answer to David Goggins. I'm definitely not, by the way. I'm definitely not.
My words to you,
I don't think
I think you were insulted.
I've never been so insulted in my life, but I'm definitely not stay hard. So basically, I did this half Ironman, and then a year later I kept training. I did a full Ironman, and a full Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile on a bike, and then a marathon, 26.2 mile marathon. Obviously, that's a ridiculous distance. And it requires a lot of training, and it was fun, but it is still a race distance, so the onus is on trying to do it as quick as you can. So obviously when I did my first one, brilliant, right, I'm going to do one next year and I'm going to do it quicker, like you do. So I trained a bit harder, and I did it a bit quicker and felt kind of good. And then I thought, right, next year I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it even quicker. And that happened, and I did, and I reached a time that I was really happy with. I think I was aiming for something like sub 11 hours, and I think I did it in like 10 40 or something like that.
Wow.
And felt very satisfied with the time. But I've always had this thing about how I can judge my effort, that when I finish a race, I always think, even if it's just a 5-mile running race or whatever, I think, could I turn around and do it again? It's just this thing I've got in my head. I don't know what's the matter with me. Right. So when I got to the end of that third Ironman, I thought, could I turn around and do it again? And I thought, yes, I could, probably. You know, it wouldn't be pretty, but I thought I could probably
That
get
was a
around
genuine thought in
yes,
your mind.
and that was in, literally, this is why, obviously, psychologists do not need to be reviewing me. That actually happened in the finisher's funnel. You know, you run through the finish line and there's a funnel to get your medal in your T-shirt. I was in that funnel thinking,
And
could I turn
if
around
somebody
and do it?
goes to you, right, turn around,
Could
go.
I do it? Like, I'm not saying I was gonna do it, but would I be prepared to do it? And I remember thinking, yeah, probably. I could probably do it again if I had to. I know, it's weird.
Wow.
So then, of course, I thought, right, well, next year I've got to do a double Ironman. So I had seen a programme on TV that had a Welsh rugby star was training to do a ski to the South Pole or something like that.
I've seen,
and as
yeah.
part of his training, he did a race in Wales called the Double Brutal. So the Brutal is an iron distance race, so the distance that I'd done before, but over very mountainous terrain. So I thought, right, well, what I'll do is I'll go and do the Brutal, because I've done that distance before, but it's over mountains, and I like going over mountains. So I went and did the Brutal, which instead of taking you 11 hours, takes you like 18 hours, because it's very, very
Brutal.
hilly. Well, the marathon goes up and down Mount Snowdon.
Wow.
So and the bike course is very, very mountainous. So I did that, and then I thought, right, I'm going to do the Double Brutal.
Are you doing this on your own, just off your own back as well?
Well, it's an organised event, so there are other people doing the event. Not many, but there's other people doing the event. And obviously, the most important thing of this, which I was going to come on to, but my wife reminded me it's the number one thing I need to say, is that, and I mean this literally, you literally cannot do these more extreme things without help of your wife and friends.
Yeah.
Like and that gets really obvious the later we go into my career, really. So basically, I did the Double Brutal one year. So that's a 4.8 mile swim, 224 mile on the bike, and then a double marathon, a 50, what would that be, like 54 mile run.
How old
All
are you
mountainous.
at this point?
Oh, well, I was late on, so I'd be in my late 30s, probably, something like that. But your endurance gets better as you get older, anyway.
Of course.
And, so I did this double one, and the weather is horrendous. I mean, I had a support rider to help me on the ride, my friend Matt, and at one stage it was 55 mile an hour headwinds and torrential rain. So it was really, really bad conditions. But I finished that in about 36 hours, something like that, and I think I finished like about 8th or something, which was about as high up as I'd ever finished in a race. Now, obviously, the field is smaller, but that made me feel pretty good. And so, obviously, the natural progression after that was to do the Triple Brutal the following year. So the Triple Brutal has been voted one, I think, in the top 10 of the world's hardest triathlons. So there are really extreme triathlons, which we can talk about if you want to. But the Brutal is in the top sort of 10, and that's because of where it is and the distance involved. So that's like a 7.8 mile swim in a very cold lake. It's Lake Pandan, which is one of the coldest lakes in the country, because it's surrounded by slate quarries. So when it rains, the water that was at 27,000 feet is in the lake in the matter of like a couple of hours. So it hasn't a chance to warm up. So it's a cold swim. 340 odd mile with just under the same climbing as Mount Everest. I think it was 26,000 feet of climbing on the bike course, and then a triple marathon including going up and down Mount Snowdon. So that took me.
I'm in awe right now. I'm just sitting there.
That took me about
Come
55 hours, and I finished second. So what I've noticed
Out of how many there?
There were probably, I think, maybe 20 starters, maybe 19 starters. Obviously, a lot of people don't finish.
Do they not finish?
Some people don't finish. It's really easy to drop out these things. I mean, you could get injured so easily.
Yeah, of course.
But then also, as well as injuries, you could... So eating enough food is hard, and so you could get to the stage where you'd missed a few feeds and you didn't feel great. So even if you could have carried on, you maybe make a snap decision and stop. So it's actually really easy to stop, actually.
But you finished second.
But I finished second and felt really, really good because obviously I was relevant. So the guy who finished third, now a friend of mine, obviously, because I try to make friends with everybody that I meet, we were going neck and neck until the last sort of couple of hours. So I was like relevant in a race, and I don't know if I've ever been relevant in a race. So that felt really, really cool, actually. Wow. And that was like the peak of me being fortunate enough to get the people around me that could really help me do these things. So my wife, my mate. In fact, I'm not going to mention everybody because I'll miss somebody and it's not fair. But there are like a core of people.
As long as you said wife, you're going to be all right.
Well, it's no accident. You know? I've had my instructions before I left the house. But there's this core of people that, because obviously when you're, so like in the triple brutal, by the end, I had 1 hour 40 sleep in total in the 55 hours. So I had like 3 sets of 20 minutes and a 40-minute sleep. And I'm hallucinating by the end. So you've got people that are walking with you. I mean, my mate that was walking with me, he claimed that, I don't know this, but he claimed that I actually fell asleep and started snoring while walking. And that was the end of one of the loops, and he put me to bed afterwards. I had 20 minutes sleep. I woke up and I said, no, I need to go back to sleep. And I had another 20 minutes, and I got up and I was as right as rain then. But before that, I was hallucinating really badly.
Really?
So it's pitch black, but you can make out the trees. And I could see like the most real squirrels you could ever imagine, but about, I don't know, 10 of them jumping from tree to tree. It wasn't happening.
And they definitely were.
No, it's pitch black. They definitely were there. And I was seeing it as clear as day as well. But that's just lack of sleep.
Yeah, the sleep deprivation is one of the wildest hallucinations.
I would say that, I mean, I've done a couple of much bigger races that I'll tell you about, but that in some respects was the most difficult race because it's the one with the most sleep deprivation, which is, I think, probably harder than exhaustion to deal with because you can't actually do anything about it other than go to sleep. And if you're sleeping, you're not getting any closer to the finish line. So it's a fine balance, I think. But yeah, so that was before COVID, basically. Then we had all the COVID debacle, which is, I think there's like a law that you have to mention it on everything that you talk about, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
But obviously, but what I did then is I decided that the next race that I wanted to do was a real biggie. And so I knew that I'd need a few years to get ready for it. So I wanted to do a race called the deca. So a deca is an Ironman. It's like 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile on the bike, and then a marathon. So anywhere between, for me, 11 and 17 hours. I wanted to do one of those a day for 10 consecutive days.
Were you always being sponsored during
No, so I didn't raise any sponsorship money until the deca. And there's a really good reason why. There isn't a good reason why. I thought there was a good reason why. So I thought that these things I was doing them just for me. And that was part of what was precious about them, if you like. Because, in life, you're always doing things for each other, aren't you? And it was nice to have something that was just for me.
Your own battle.
Yeah. And also, in my head, it was like a really good excuse to spend time with people that I like spending time with, because of all the support crew that helped me. It was like, I mean, how often in life do you put yourself in a position where you need those good people around you, on a real need basis? And so I really liked that aspect of it. I found it difficult to articulate it, but I really liked
You're doing quite well now.
Yeah, I can talk. I liked doing things that put me in really dependent contact with people that I really liked. And so that was part of it. But I avoided raising money because, one, I didn't really have necessarily a cause that I believed in. And also, I didn't want the extra pressure because there's always a risk that you're not going to do these things. So because I've achieved them, people think like, oh, well, he did that. But you could so easily not do it. You could so easily fail. And I think the thought of letting people down would have perhaps weighed heavy on me. But when I got ready to do the deca, a lady that I work with called Mary, she said, this is really big. I think you ought to raise money. And I said, well, I don't really want to raise money and give it so that a charity CEO has it for his wages. You know, like if you give to big charities, you don't know where that money's going. And she said, well, why don't you raise it for Alfreton? Because obviously I was born in Alfreton. I've always hung around in Alfreton. And I work in a school now. And she said, well, why don't you do something that'd be good for the kids? Because I like to see the kids succeed because it gives me a real buzz. So we sort of thought, oh, go on then, we'll raise money. Perhaps we'll do, you know, this sort of vague idea of youth activities in Alfreton, I guess. Because I benefited from youth clubs in Alfreton when I was growing up. The Derbyshire County Council built a custom building called the Polygon and filled it with youth facilities. And I really benefited from them and the people that I met there. So that's what we did. So I did the deca. That was in 2022. Yes, 2022. July. So it's a year now. I think I'd be on day 7 right now of the deca. And that was in York. I had a full support crew help me. And it was incredibly difficult. So it was basically, I think I averaged just under 15 hours a day for 10 consecutive days. So it was a swim in a lake, which would take about an hour and 25 minutes, something like that. And then it was 112 mile on the bike that would take about between 6 and a quarter and 7 hours.
What's the terrain like there?
That was pan flat. That was absolutely pan flat. Okay. If you're doing a deca, you can't be messing about with hills. I mean, it was an 8 mile bike loop. And I think there was 7 feet of climbing on the 8 mile loop. I felt every 7 feet of it. By the end, it was a total nightmare. There was a little tiny humpback bridge. And I'm not kidding. On day 1, literally, you rode over it like it wasn't there. By day 10, it was like climbing Mount Everest. Honestly, it was a total nightmare. Nice. So it was about 7 hours on the bike, 6.5, 7 hours. And then a marathon, which was a 1.1 mile loop around the lake so that you could keep seeing your support crew. And that took about 6 hours a day, basically. So yeah, it's about 15 hours a day. And that was tough, you know, because you've got to eat and sleep and it all became about getting in bed. That's all.
Can we go into that a little bit? Because I'm really fascinated in the eating and sleeping routine of that. So, yeah, when you're doing something so much endurance as, let's say, 15-hour days, how many calories are you aiming to consume?
Yeah, no, I know that. So during the deca, I was eating about 8,500 calories a day.
8,500.
Something like that. It worked out.
It can't be stodgy as well.
Well, no, I mean, so I was very lucky that a friend of mine who's a YouTuber, he's a triathlete as well, and he got in touch with a nutrition company, and they have nutritionists who are students and lecturers and doctors at the University of Liverpool John. And this guy who runs this company said, well, I'd like to come up and just see what you're eating and drinking and record it, and maybe I could learn something from it. So he did, and he was there a few days, and then a couple of students came up. Now, when I say students, we're not talking about like spotty oiks like I used to be when I was a student. We're talking about Harvey Fortis, who is a PhD student and one of the leading ultra endurance nutritionists in the country. Wow. Dr. Jennifer Barrett, who is a PhD doctor at the University of Liverpool. They're the type of students that we're talking about. So they came up and they recorded everything and helped adjust what I was eating to make it better. And we became really close friends. And the reason why we became really close friends is they came up, I think, on day 3, and the night of day 2 I absolutely shot myself in the foot with what I ate, so I was in a right mess on day 3.
What did you eat
so
then?
Basically what I thought, my plan in my head was that
Bolognese.
I would be well, it's worse than that. People forget I'm stupid. You know what I mean? They think he probably knows what he's doing. So basically my plan was, I know that you need to eat real food, not sports nutrition, because your stomach can cope with real food better for longer. So I was eating sort of sandwiches and crisps and biscuits and things like that. And then my plan was that at night I would have the support crew would have a takeaway meal, and I would have a small amount of that because it would be high in calories and would probably set me right because I'd not ate enough in the day because I'd be exercising. So, and that worked okay the first day, and then the second day when they had pizza, and I can remember eating the pizza, and I was in a mess as you are when you've done an Ironman, and I can remember eating the pizza, and there's a photograph of me eating this pizza with Harvey and Jen, who'd just arrived, stood at the side of me. And I swear, if you look at that picture, you can see the disapproving look coming from her, right? So, but
a glare.
yeah. But anyway, I got up the next morning and swam. And I was unwell in the lake, basically. Really unwell. And the problem with being unwell, apart from the fact that it's uncomfortable, is that you lose everything that you've consumed. So you're then starting from zero. And so I was in a pickle on the bike, and what they did is they fed me and switched my diet slightly. Just basically beige, stodgy stuff to start with, and then trying different things that would work. So they worked out that I eat better if I'm giving really small portions. I eat better if...
And this is during... Are you running and
Oh, yeah, I'm right. Yeah.
You're riding
Oh,
and
yeah.
eating.
They say that my superpower, because I'm not even that great a sports person, but my superpower is that I can eat a lot of food without getting sick.
That's
So
crazy, yeah.
I can eat 8,500 calories of mashed potato without feeling full, right? So, and I never have any problem with appetite. I'm always wanting to eat. So basically, it made the deca a real success. They did. So about 8,500 calories, and it was always just a race to get in bed. That was basically all it was each day. I had competitors with this. There was about, I can't remember, was it 15 people started, I think? Yeah, I think 15 people started. And I knew I was really fit, so it was really unusual in that my training for the deca actually went almost perfect, and that never happens. It's like, I'll give you an example. So I know that I'm going to get sick during training because I'm training so hard, I'm worn down, I work in a school, there's lots of germs. I even got sick when I wanted to get sick. I'd just done a big block of training, so I was going to have an easy week anyway. I even caught COVID when I wanted to catch COVID, if I was going to catch it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was like...
It was in that little stopgap.
Exactly. So it worked perfectly. They made it perfect. All my other support crew, my wife, everybody else that went, made a massive difference. And I won it. So basically I was like... couple of maybe 3 hours behind at the end of maybe day 4, but I was starting to feel fitter and some of the competitors were starting to get weaker. And plus I had a lot of support that maybe some of the other competitors didn't have as well, but hey, that's their problem. They should have got organised, shouldn't they? That's the way I look at it.
How are they measuring it? So you're all in this...
Yeah, so basically the lake is around some buoys.
Yeah.
It's set around some buoys. The route is an 8-mile bike route.
Yeah.
And so you just have to do so many, and you have to cross over a timing mat.
Right.
And then the run is around a lake, and you just have to cross over a timing mat.
So it's all the timing mat.
Oh, yeah, it's all official race, that is. It's called the UK Deca. They run it every 2 years.
So then... Every day when you finish, you've got your set time. Then all these 15 other people have set times. Come on,
and then they add them all together, and then who's the winner at the end of 10 days.
I get it.
It's really cool.
Really, really cool.
Yeah, well, it did feel really cool. And it felt like you were in sort of like you spent 4 days pretending it wasn't a race, but because I'm mega competitive anyway, I was only pretending that it wasn't a race.
Yeah, it's in the back of your mind at every opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously what happened was. The situation arose that I'd been dreaming about all my sporting career, because obviously I don't win things, I'm not quick, but I got into this position where I was feeling stronger and everybody else on the road, everybody else doing the race was at a different point, and I was able to put a massive amount of time into the person that was ahead of me to overtake them. So then I only had to have day 9 and 10 where I had to keep ahead of them. But obviously by then they were really tired, and I was on and up because I'd just got into first place. So it played out perfect for me, really. But I mean, it's sort of silly talking like this because, it's difficult to find exact figures, but probably less than 250 people have ever done a deca in the world. So winning it doesn't make any difference, does it, really? I mean, just completing it is awesome. But...
Do you know how
can't
close you are to the winner?
Oh God, you're miles away. There are people out there that are complete freaks.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not kidding. Like I'm like a, I'm a plodder, and and I can keep going a long time, and I can eat a lot, and
it's all subjective.
I deal well with adversity. But do you know what I mean? There are people out there that are running times that are unbelievable. I mean, I felt lucky to have done it, around about the 14, 15 hour mark. But you've got people, I think. Well, there's a guy right now who's just completed 105 on the trot. He's just set the new world record. But I don't even think that's the most impressive. There's a guy, a proper ultra triathlete who did 60 Ironmen, and I think they were all sub 12 hours. Well, I would struggle to do one sub 12 hours.
And he did 60.
He did 60
in a year.
All, 60 all back to back, like one day, but all under 12 hours. I mean,
so really interesting question there. But how do people like that? Is that their job then?
A lot are sponsored, yeah. So a lot are sponsored, but I don't think there's many people that are making a lot of money out of being triathletes, because it's such an obscure thing. But
it's just so time consuming.
Yeah, I would imagine. Do I think that there is any ultra triathlete who does it as a full time? Probably not. I would imagine all of them have a job. I would have thought.
But that person surely, for the 60 days.
Well, I follow him online, and he does lots of interesting things, and so maybe he must get some sponsorship.
Maybe on Instagram as well.
Yeah,
you can be sponsored.
I mean, I'm a 47-year-old man, so like Instagram is sort of. I'm trying now to be like him, but it's a nightmare. But you know what I mean? Yes, maybe some people are getting.
They're quite big in the game for sponsorship.
I would have thought so. Yeah, but I won it. It was awesome. It was really good. But then to bring it right up to date, I wanted to do something again this year. Oh no! More important, it raised £13,500 for youth activities in Alfreton.
I'll put an edit in this, and we can have a big balloon coming in, clapping,
and a lot of that was to do with. So I promoted it myself and got a couple of grand, but then I had a mate who was a YouTuber who really backed it for me,
top man,
and pushed it a lot, and that made a really big difference. So that got us off the ground, basically. And then this year I wanted to do something else, but I needed it to be something that... two things, really. My mum was poorly over Christmas, so I didn't want to do something that would impact on training too much.
Yeah.
And then also, I didn't want it to cost me so much, because... they can be really costly in like ancillary costs, like what your food costs go, your time. You're not spending as much time with your wife, and that's like not nice. You want to be spending time. So I tried to look for something that's a bit short and a bit cheaper. And obviously, I made friends with Harvey and Jen, the scientists. And this is the funny bit. Like I thought I was doing them a favour. I came up with this idea that maybe I could do something because they were collecting data. The way I remember it, they dispute this, by the way, but the way I remember it is they were collecting data on the deca and were complaining that they were a bit disappointed because it wasn't laboratory conditions and they couldn't do the calculations that they wanted to do. Oh. So I came up with the idea, we'll do something in a lab, and then you can collect all the data you want, and I'm doing you a massive favour. And what I've thought, and this is true, this is how stupid I am, I thought they work in a lab, I'll go and do something in a lab, and they can just, take the little measurements, and they'll be able to do a pie chart about it. They'll love it. Brilliant.
Makes sense to me, mate.
Free for everybody. It's great. What I didn't realise, obviously, they work for the University of Liverpool John. So obviously, it's cost thousands in terms of like insurances and getting things through scientific ethics. And, people have used like their research budget on doing it.
Wow.
So what I ended up doing is what we christened a quin in a gym. So I did an Ironman a day for 5 consecutive days, but in a laboratory. So I swam in a pool.
Yeah.
I rode on a static bike, and then I ran on a treadmill. And I did that the week before last, and it was dreadful. It's really tough doing it inside. But I raised another £4,000, just under £4,000 for youth activities. Again, I had another friend, a different friend this time, who was supporting me with some YouTube videos. If you go on Hippo Triathlon channel on YouTube, you'll be able to see the videos from the quin in the gym.
I'm going to be watching straight. I might put some in there.
Yeah. He'd love that as well, because he's a new YouTuber,
awesome.
So he has hardly any subscribers.
Oh, mate,
and
let's get him
he's
subs.
A really nice guy as well.
Subs.
Yeah, it'd be really cool for him, actually, yeah.
That, when you're being sponsored,
yes,
does that help to the psychology of it a little bit for you?
It does now. So
before it was kind of just your own mental battle that you wanted to achieve for yourself.
Yeah, it's not as if like when I was doing the deca, I was thinking I've got to do this because I'll let all those other people down. It's not that. It's more, which is what I was worried about. It's more the other side. It's more running round a lake all day is totally pointless, isn't it? So the more meaning you can give that, the better it is for you. So like when I was in the lab this time, it's really uncomfortable in the lab. It's hot. I don't know if you
Oh,
can
mate,
see
your
this.
arms, man. They can.
Taking bloods, a
Dude.
respirator every 15 minutes to measure my expelled
What are
air.
the things in the
Muscle
legs?
biopsies out of my legs.
Muscle biopsies.
So you could quite easily, if you let it, you could quite easily think, why am I doing this? And so raising money for supporting youth activities in Alfreton is like one of those other reasons. One of many, but one of those other reasons. So it really does help.
So in them sort of races, you do hit walls where you're going of nihilism to some aspect.
Oh, man, yeah. I mean,
what is the point?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's I suffer... So I'm pretty sure that a lot of people have... That's a big part of it for them, in that they have lots of points. Which, well, why am I doing this? My foot hurts. I need to stop. So
yeah.
I have a little bit of that, like anybody would, but actually, no, I don't think that is really a problem for me. This is really weird, but I'll say it anyway. I find doing them quite relaxing because you can only think about that thing that you're doing. So there is nothing else that matters at that particular point. So it sort of unloads your mind a bit. You're only thinking about the next stroke,
completely
the
present.
next pedal revolution, the next step, particularly in the last stages when, I mean, I'm not kidding. Anybody who's run a marathon knows that the last 10k of a marathon is pretty horrible. Yeah, your legs hurt. Well, the last half of a marathon on day 8 is vile. Your legs, your feet are just really, really hurting. So literally all I'm thinking about is next step, next step.
Wow.
And so that does come with a certain level of relaxation.
It makes sense as you're saying it, yeah.
Maybe it's like chanting or something, or I don't know, people who do needlepoint. They're just doing the next stitch, aren't they?
Completely in flow.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. That was what was difficult about the quin in the gym. It's when you're on a treadmill. I thought the problem was going to be lack of stimulation because I'm in a lab, but the problem actually was too much stimulation. So electric lights, there's always something in your periphery happening. So I found it more difficult to switch off and get in the flow during the quin, particularly in the last stages of the run.
I think I've hit there before. I've been on long runs before. I was really kind of more in my sporty stage 18, 19 in the boxing, and we used to get backpacks on and fill them with sand and just go, and I do remember in my head just going 1, 2, 1, 2, and it got quite meditative at some point. So maybe, I reflected on what you're saying. I mean,
I don't see myself as a spiritual person or anything like that. I don't really add spiritual dimensions to things, but on a practical level, you're only just doing that thing, aren't you? Yeah. And that hardly ever happens in life, so it's quite nice when that does happen, I think.
Okay.
Like when I'm watching
can you apply it to other things, though?
Well,
I
suppose you can, but it's just more difficult. Like, some people can sit and watch a film, can't they?
Yeah.
Whereas me, I have to watch it in like 15-minute bursts.
I've started applying that to when I'm cleaning the house now. I'm like, okay, if I just do this, then the next bit I'll do, and you compartmentalize it a little bit. It doesn't seem like a mammoth task anymore.
Well, you can when you're starting a deca, you cannot think that you're doing a deca.
Yeah.
I mean, I do it with, like, every morning I wake up, I've only got 3 things to do. So I've only got to swim. And then when I've swum, I've only got 2 things to do. I've only got to go for a bike ride.
That.
And when I'm on the bike, for example, so the bike is 180 kilometres, yeah? Well, I never think about riding 180 kilometres, because who the hell would want to do that? So I just think, right, I need to do 50 kilometres.
Yeah.
And then when I've done 50 kilometres, I need to get to 80 kilometres. And when I've done 80 kilometres, I've only got 20 kilometres before I've done 100 kilometres.
And then
I've only got to do 30 kilometres, and then I've only got 50 kilometres back, and then I've only got to get up to 150 kilometres, and then I've only got 30 kilometres, so it's easy.
Playing mental arithmetics in your head, I love it.
Yeah, don't run in a straight line.
Exact same as me, man. I do that exactly the same thing.
And then the marathon, you just basically have to start, which is hard enough.
Yeah.
And then when you start, for me, like, I never used to run with music, but since I've started going long, like a deca, I trained for the deca using music, and that really helped. A lot of races you're not allowed to listen to music, you see, but a deca, they'll pretty much...
Is there much science in that?
I just find that so I've always liked music, but I won't say I was into music.
They must have done so many studies on music.
Yeah, but there's a lot of history with songs, isn't there? So my playlist which if you're interested to know how long my playlist is now 10 very slow marathons long. So it's about 60 hours, my playlist.
Well curated.
Yeah, not really. I've even had to put like some more rubbish songs in, so it's not banger after banger after banger. Because otherwise I'll just blow up
when you hear the bangers as well. Yeah.
But I found that they take, so you know when you hear a song that you heard at school, when I'm doing a deca, I can spend 15 minutes at school living what happened when that song was playing. So that's past 15 minutes without me even thinking about it. Or sometimes a song will come up from, when I was in the army, and I'll have 15 minutes thinking about when I was in the army, and that's another 15 minutes gone. So I found music quite a good trigger to get away a little bit. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, you're really tired when, Carly Rae Jepsen comes on and you get a bit tearful. That's when you know you're really tired. Something like that.
So meaningful.
I love the lyrics.
I just met you. This has got everything to it.
Yeah. That's when you know you're ready for bed.
Mate, so this is a phenomenal story, and you're a phenomenal human. I don't think I've been in these trenches before on a podcast. I've done about 150 now, but there's just so much meat to it. I'd love to talk about the type of person you are then to go on this journey. What were you like at school being a young person? You said what was it? The Polygon?
Yeah, Polygon Youth Club.
The Polygon Youth Club.
Honestly, at school, I would describe myself as perfectly average. So school wasn't hard. It wasn't easy. It was just the place where you had to go every day.
Yeah. And childhood was...
Great. Yeah. Great childhood. I got siblings when I was 11. So I was like an only child until I was 11. And then Tom and Ash came along and ruined it for me. No, which was awesome. Yeah. Ash is in a band, Death of the High Street. He'd kill me if I didn't get it on this podcast. I never mentioned Death of the High Street.
I'll pop it up.
So yeah, just perfectly average, run of the mill. Youth club on a Friday night, swimming club on a Wednesday night. The thing that I think now, where my childhood perhaps had an influence on the things that I do now, are probably two things. One is with my mates, we used to love doing what we called having a DOS. So we just used to go away on a mission somewhere, and we'd be, going down a pit face on a piece of Wrigley tin, or riding over a gap that was way too big to jump over, or whatever. And these things are a bit like that for me now. They're the adult version of that. Like I'm going away on a DOS with my mates. I don't know if everybody else had a DOS. That's what we called it. You just go marauding down over the fields for ages.
That was us in the sandbags, but we didn't know where we were going. And then you go into the night, it'd be 3 a.m. We're like, where the fuck are we?
Yeah. So, that's like that. And then the other thing is my mum and dad encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do. And I always felt like the best way I can describe it is, if you go out on a tightrope, you're more likely to go out on the tightrope if there's a safety net. Yeah, you'd be crazy to do it without a safety net, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
There'd be lots of reasons not to. My mum and dad were always like that safety net. They always said, well, go and do it, and if you fall, we'll still love you, and it'll still be exactly the same.
Oh, man.
So that just meant... They didn't vocalise that. That was just, now I look back, that's how it felt. So I always felt like I could take risks.
Snippet of the podcast, though, because for lots of parents, they don't give them that. It's very precious, and it's very, this is the way it is. But to just allow you to be who you want to be and know that you're enough, and you're
they would always
cool.
They would never be afraid of offering advice. But if I chose not to take that advice, that wouldn't impact on how they treated me.
Mate, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that they did on purpose. You'd have to ask them. Maybe you should get my mum in for a podcast. She'd be embarrassed.
Yeah, would she be up for it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
dude,
we could talk into it.
She's next.
Yeah, but they just they just basically said, well, you should try then. And so that's always stopped with me. So I'm never really afraid of having a go. And I sort of think that if something went wrong, if it didn't work out, that wouldn't be the end of the world. It doesn't even say anything really about you, does it? Really? So I don't worry too much about...
You've been daring and courageous to try that. I think that's where a lot of young people struggle. They don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to fail.
Well, they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get it wrong. I get it wrong all the time. But...
You've been bred that...
Yeah, well, I don't think you should worry. It's like... you're okay, aren't you?
Yeah, you're enough.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, you're enough, maybe. Yeah. But like I say, I wasn't necessarily aware of that as a child. It was obviously influencing me. But as I've grown older and look back, I can definitely see that. And then that's what makes me think, oh, I'm going to have a go at a deca. Because, you know, the worst that could happen is that I fail to do it. Yeah. And, you know, the people that love me will still love me, won't they? So...
Mate, I'm a dad now, and this is the bit of the podcast I'm going to snip it out and always watch. I really will, and that's the sort of person and parent I want to be and want to showcase to the kids. Because I'm guessing you in that mindset now, of anything that you dare to do, it's not a complete failure. It's not this
there's something to take out of everything, isn't there? Definitely, yeah,
so,
definitely.
So do you have that mentality then? If you didn't finish a marathon, didn't finish a deca, does it haunt you in some aspect?
No, it doesn't haunt me. I mean, I'm the same as everybody, right? You know that anxiety that you get, you know, oh, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
Or, you know, oh, if I'd have done that different, I'd have done it. So everybody's the same, aren't they? But I think it's just whether you let that... Does that say something about you at your core? No,
and then dictate your life.
It doesn't, does it? Yeah, it doesn't. No. You know, marathons are hard, aren't they? And if you feel really tired and drop out, what you need to do is probably think, well, do I want to do another marathon? Yes, but or not. I mean, you might decide actually it's not for me, and that's fine too. If you decide it's for you, you think, well, why did I drop out? Well, I was tired. Was I tired because I didn't do enough training? Yes, right. Well, what training did I do? What training can I do? You use it as a tool to get better, don't you? But I do think it's okay to not do it.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I think people think they've got to do things. So, like in the sporting circles I mix in, some people do things to like face their fear. I'm not sure that's a great motivation, really.
Yeah.
It's hard to say why did I do a deca, but I did a deca because it's there to do. Yeah. It's in my sort of wheelhouse. I could do this whole process that I would enjoy that would get there. Yeah, it's healthy to test yourself, isn't it? Yeah. But it's also like the training for the deca. Like, I like that. I like getting up and going swimming. I like riding my bike with my mates. I like running with my wife. I like going on wonderful cycling holidays with my wife. So if all of that could also lead to me doing this slightly scary thing, then that's really cool, isn't it? But if it didn't, I wouldn't feel that I had to.
Because I think that just chasing your demons all the time, you're probably forever going to do it. Like,
well, yeah, I mean,
when
who
you
doesn't?
complete that.
Yeah, next one. And I don't feel that that's the case. I mean, I've certainly think that while I'm at the right age, before I get too old, I would like to do some more stuff. But my main target now that I've set myself is not necessarily a sporting target. I've set myself the goal, for no reason, really, that I want to raise £50,000 in total for youth activities in my local community. Now, I don't really know why I've done that, I'll be honest, but it's just that, well, nobody else is doing it. And it clearly ought to be done. And, you know, I'm off to a good start, aren't I? I've raised like nearly 20 grand.
And is it really just because of the feeling that youth activities gave you? Or is there more to it? Is there
youth activities gave it to me, definitely. But then also, I've worked in school now for maybe 5 years as a teaching assistant. So I had a business, I sold that, and... because I wanted...
And what a wonderful school as well.
Yeah, it's awesome school. Yeah, my wife, basically, me and my wife decided that between us, we could cope with a lower paid job so that we could have more time doing the things that we wanted to do. And she worked in a school, so she wanted me to get a job that had the same school holidays so we could holiday together more. So I sold my half of the business, I went in school. And plus, I had this sort of niggle in my head that I don't have children, but I'd never worked with children. And I thought, oh, maybe I ought to do it so that I can say, well, I did it. And even if I didn't like it, I ought to have a go. Because I kind of, you know, there's some things that you ought to have a go at, didn't you, in life? And one of them for me was perhaps working in a school or working with kids. So I did that. But one of the motivations for this youth activities thing is, like, I watch the kids at school... and they deserve it. They deserve to have facilities to do what they want. Now, they can't vote. All stuff's been cut for whatever reason. Don't get me started. So, somebody's got to do it. And when I looked around, nobody was doing it. And so, although now what's happened is we've formed this committee that's going to become a charity called AYUP, made of loads of people from Alfreton who are really working really hard. They needed perhaps an excuse or a catalyst to do it, and circumstance led to that it just happened to be me.
We have a local nutter.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah. So, but the kids deserve it. That they do. They've got nothing to do. Like, I walked down onto Alfreton Welfare the other day, and the hedges aren't trimmed, the grass ain't cut. Yeah, there's a bit of a tatty skate park. You've got kids, wandering around with no what to do, and they need some stuff offering to them, and then it's up to them whether they take it, isn't it? Yeah. They don't have to take it, and it's not for every kid, but I think it just needs to be. It seems reasonable to me that a town like Alfreton would have a youth club on a Friday night that was free. I understand that some parents are really well off, or some parents prioritise, let's say, sending the kids to a club. But I know loads of people, like, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about working people who just can't afford, £3.50 a week, £5, whatever it is now. And so, and also it seems like the sort of thing that a town ought to be providing, doesn't it? It's like,
really
like a
does.
Library and a swimming pool and, filling potholes and things. It just seems like a thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, youth activities.
Yeah.
They're definitely the future generation.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is, like, if you must have stood around with people of your own age. It's not like it used to be in my day, and they're just playing up, aren't they? They're hooligans. Yeah. Well, whose fault's that? Yeah, because it ain't theirs, because they're children. So they literally are not. They're not capable of being held to account, are they? Because they're children. Legally they're not until they're 14.
I mentioned this to you, but it was at a poetry event where I met a guy called Mr. G, and we're in London, and I thought my road had to be London, as everybody does. It's like, if you're going to make it in creativity, get to London. And I remember afterwards we were having a drink together, and I was just talking horrendous things about my town. I was like, you don't want to go to where I'm from, it's where EGL came from, and there's all this racist connotation and all these things. And then he just stopped me mid-tracks and went, yeah, but whose fault's that? Exactly. And I spun to me, I was like, oh yeah, if all I do is go out and just talk smack on my town all the time and say how rubbish it is, nobody's ever going to want to go to it, and nothing's ever going to change. So his phrase was, if there's not a scene, make a scene. And that's exactly what you're doing. I find it amazing. I find it wonderful.
I don't really fully understand my motivation.
Yeah.
But I don't think you have to.
No, just
if you've got
keep
the motivation,
stepping, you in your marathon.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you just step.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if every single night there was a free youth activity for people in Alfreton? Yeah, that's great. Wouldn't it be great if there was a facility, a building that was provided out of that could be used for other things, maybe in the day or something? And doesn't it seem reasonable that a town like Alfreton, with all of those trading estates around it, all of those people living in it, all of those people that I've met who care about it, doesn't it seem reasonable that that would be the case? Well, if it seems reasonable, it probably is reasonable. So we ought to do it, don't we?
You're doing a good maths equation there. Yeah. If that and that is Occam's razor, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it
sounds like it makes sense. It makes sense.
And like a bit like, the deca or whatever, if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of it's not the end of my world. It's perhaps the end of some people's world, actually. But you've got to have a go, haven't you? Otherwise, how can you say...
How are you going to make that 50 then? What's the next madness around the corner?
I tend not to plan them.
Okay.
I've got a few. So my brother is talking about, who's in that band, he's talking about, he did a sponsored walk a few years ago. He's on about doing another event with some bands on in Alfreton.
Brilliant.
Which no doubt I'll keep you posted about, because an appearance from Rhythmical Mike
I'll
be kind
in.
of cool. And then me and my wife are planning on doing a really difficult ultra race in April together. So I thought maybe as a husband and wife from Alfreton type of thing might raise a few quid as well. So I'll probably do that. That's got a 50% failure rate. So I have no idea whether I'm going to be able to do it. Because, I mean, one of the reasons why I got into ultra triathlon is I'm not that good at ultra running or ultra cycling or ultra swimming. So if you do three badly.
And doing it together, because obviously when it's your own mental battle, you're doing it. But will it be conflicting with?
Yeah, we did one of the 100 milers together, and that was awesome. But it is different, definitely, because you're having high and low points at different times to each other. But me and Kate are good at supporting each other in these things.
That's interesting. That's a cool dynamic.
Yeah,
because I can imagine for some people, that motivator is actually sometimes the last thing you need.
Yeah,
because you're like, I'm fine on my own. I don't need that. And maybe that's part of my psyche and mentality. But when I'm being pushed through something, I can feel a little bit diminished at
It's
times.
a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult.
What do they need in this moment?
Yeah.
Just self-awareness, isn't it? And
Yeah.
awareness of who you're with.
Yeah. And it is, I mean, it will bring a new dynamic. But it is
interesting.
awesome seeing Kate do that, because she is crazy fit as well. She did a race.
What a cool couple.
Yeah, she did a race last year. Yeah, called the Haute Route, which was a cycle race from Nice to Megève in the Alps. Megève is near Geneva, basically. So she did 7 days through the Alps, like a mini Tour de France thing.
I love it.
It was awesome. I was in like the camper van, supported her at the top of the mountains. It was really good. Yeah.
And when you say you've got support groups, and there's even somebody that follows you around,
Yeah.
what are they following you around on?
Yeah. So basically, I suppose with outside of my wife, the number one support crew is a guy that I met through cycling called Matt. So on the deca, you weren't allowed to have support riders because there was no safety element because it was daylight. But he was there for the full 10 days. I mean, he's self-employed. He gave up God knows how much money to come and support me for 10 days. We're going on holiday. Me and Kate and him and his wife and 3 kids are going on holiday.
Wow.
To France for a little bit as well soon. But yeah, he's like a quiet engineering type, but he's proper got a heart of gold. But then there's all these other people as well that do all sorts. So I mean, literally, they are like, I don't want to make this too graphic, but they're like literally wiping me bum and feeding me. And things like that.
Yeah.
But when I did the triple, because it was at night, you have to have a support rider who rides just at the side of you to make sure you don't fall off because you're asleep. And he rode. So when I rode the 340 mile of the triple, with obviously with 26,000 feet of climbing, really difficult ride, he rode nearly 200 mile of that with me.
Wow. So I'm getting
no gain at all.
You're basically on the race.
Yeah.
You're doing everything. And then at certain points,
yeah, they've got like a tent
in.
set up, and
Right.
so every time you do a loop, you'll come back and they'll feed you and check your tires,
wow.
and then off you go again. And then it's
This is
crazy,
ace.
totally crazy. And like, you know,
What's he doing there for the? Is he on his phone as well, or watching something, or are they just?
no. He's not. If you asked him, he spends his time cleaning my equipment and
Mate,
preparing.
he's on it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they all are. I mean, you like I said, I don't want to mention everybody, but I think Matt is worth a mention because he was there for the full 10 days of the deca. And when I went to do the quin in the gym, now I'm in a laboratory, there's scientists looking after me. Well, of the 5 days, he came for 3 of them. Again, he's self-employed and he's got a family. So I think Matt, as well as my wife, obviously, who puts up with me at home, I think Matt is worth a named mention because I see him so much. But my brother's the same, James Saxby, Dan, there's millions of them. I mean, one guy from my cycling club, Emlyn, right? I don't even know him that well. I just met him a few times cycling. When I did the deca, he said, I'll come up and help. And he came and put all the tents and gazebos up and then just went, right? And then we did it all. And then he came on the last day and helped take all the tents. And, when I was battered and couldn't do anything,
What a
he came
man.
and, it's awesome, isn't it?
Just great humans
Yeah,
all
well,
together. What a good feel to be in there.
That's like the one thing that I do like. My favourite thing in life, without a shadow of a doubt, is hanging around with nice people. And so this has given me a perfect excuse. Same as this charity that we're talking about with youth activities. I'm interacting with nice people, and that's like really nice.
Yeah. I suppose it is, you're in the field though of people that are committed, that will go that extra mile, no pun intended.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
But
they
they're
all
quite
joke.
tenacious and driven.
Yeah, my mate Matt, he says that the thing that I like is the more I can inconvenience people around me, the more I like it. So
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
maybe it's just that.
What a guy,
yeah,
yeah.
maybe I just pick things that are
I'm
inconvenient.
starting to get all your philosophies now. It makes total sense to me, mate. Because I know you're supposed to be going at one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We're a bit over time, and will you come back?
Yeah, of course I will. Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
Insane.
I'm
really, really enjoying it.
I mean, it's really embarrassing. I hate to, because I don't do anything particularly special. And I know people always go, oh, no. But I don't. It's literally, I just go slowly for a long time. And then the money that I raised, it's not actually that I raised it, is it? I did something, and then lots of people around me helped me publicise it, and people thought that it was a good for charity. So it's not really that I'm taking credit. It's just that I've learned that if you want to raise more money, you have to put your face out there and say these things. It doesn't feel comfortable, but I understand it's part of it.
Oh, there's some great nuggets in this podcast, mate, that I'm going to be going back and listening to. I'm interested, before I do let you go, not letting you go yet, the rehabilitation and stuff and injuries, how are you not getting injured? How are you looking after your body and protecting yourself?
Yeah, the main thing is that I've done it for a very long time, so I'm built up quite a level of robustness. So you tend to, if you don't be silly, you tend to build up this physicality that can cope with it. But also, as I've got longer, and this is probably why I'm not quick like those people that I was telling you about that still do ultra triathlon but ultimate quick. The thing that hurts me is intensity, not volume.
Yeah.
So what happens is I tend to turn up the volume, the amount I'm doing, but I turn down the intensity. So a lot of my output is quite low, if you like, in terms of wattage or effort, but just for a long time.
Yeah.
And that helps me avoid injury. But I do pick them up. Like I broke my collarbone before. I broke my collarbone a year before I did the deca. I fell off my bike, basically, really common. And I had to go through all the rigmarole of trying to get that sorted. But it turns out the type of break it is, the operation is less successful to fix it. It's not going to fix itself, so they've left it what's called non-union. So there's just like a little bit broke off on the end that'll just stay there. But, you know, you just work through it and eventually it stops hurting, basically. The most serious injury I've had recently, about a year ago after the deca, your legs obviously are a bit tight. I got out of my wife's car and twisted my knee, and that's never stopped bothering me, actually.
Yeah,
but I managed to do the quin, so it's fine.
Still got the quin.
Yeah.
Of course
so
you did.
I don't suffer too much. I have orthotics in my shoes because
I was just going to ask, is equipment important?
I think it's less important than people make out.
Surely in swimming.
Well, yeah, as long as you've got a decent wetsuit for if you're in cold water. But like people make out that, like, you know, this bike is more aerodynamic than that bike. That doesn't make a lot of difference when you're travelling at about 11 mile an hour eating a garage sandwich. Do you know what I mean? The aerodynamics of your frame makes very little difference. You'd be better off, do you know what I mean, just perhaps cowling the sandwich so that...
Mate.
So, do you know what I mean? It's not that. It's more about being able to keep going, being able to eat and get into bed. They're the most important things, I think.
Mate. Oh, I'm getting you back on. It's gone way past 1, so I know you've got to get on.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure, yeah.
Can you tell people where they can follow your journey? This is your camera now.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. So you can follow me on Instagram. It's _brutal_James, triple brutal James. Send me a friend request on Facebook, James Simpson. I'm not very tech savvy. We are trying to get a website and Facebook and Instagram for the charity, which is going to be AYUP. So when that's up, maybe the next podcast
I think we could. Yeah, would you come back and talk a lot more about AYUP?
Yeah, of course I will.
That'd be great. We'll get you back on for that.
Definitely.
Fantastic, James. You've been
Thank
fantastic. You. I'll do my bit, guys. You've been a part of the Old Farm Bus, Back of the Bus Sessions podcast. I'm going to leave you on this. I always do, and I always will. Just be nice to one another, you beautiful set of buggers. That's all you got to do. Just be nice. Cheers, man.